So welcome everybody. I'm Alison from the Southern Cross Postgraduate Association. I'm very pleased to introduce Beck Brown, who's going to talk to us about building your Australian networks for international students. So we're recording and I'll post this to our YouTube library and encourage you to become a member of the Postgraduate Association. I'll pop a couple of links in the chat box. And over to you, Beck.
Oh, hello, everybody.
How's that for brief?
Oh, it's lovely to be here. Alison, I've just realized I just need the sharing moderator privileges for the sharing of the screen. Just
how do I do that? I might just pause the recording.
Zoom recording. All right. Good morning, everybody. We are absolutely rapt to be here. Welcome to this session specifically for our international student contingency. I was just having a chat to the team here. I work in conjunction with the SCU Postgraduate Association and also with SCU Careers and Employability. And I wanted to introduce to you, if you haven't already had the chance to explore the SCU website and the tools there, I thought it could be a useful place to start. I think that many of us as students, we're studying, and hopefully you guys will be working and you're managing all those other responsibilities in your lives, and you get lots and lots of emails about all sorts of things. And I wanted to just bring this to your attention because you may or may not have already come across this amazing team. They have staff members for you that can help you book, so you can book an appointment to have one-on-one career counselling sessions to help you with just about anything related to your career. You can book those appointments. So if you go on to SCU, and I'll just put it in the chat box here, SCU/careers, you will have probably, or may not, depending on your trajectory of studies so far, you may or may not have yet already come across the SCU Careers team. If you haven't, well, just see if I can get that little doodah out of the way. Just give me 1 sec, I'm going to move that. Okay, beautiful. So I just wanted to bring this website to your attention, and also all of the things that they can help you with. So I thought it'd be a particularly good place to start because they also have some embedded resources there specific for our international students. Now today I'm going to be focusing on anything to do with building your Australian network and giving you as much as I can in terms of perhaps ideas, creative ways of thinking about how to maximise your opportunities whilst you are here in Australia. But before that, as I said, I'm going to dive in here. So it's SCU Careers for all things career related whilst you are here. Alison and I will be here for the next couple of weeks. We've got a workshop next week on finding part-time work. And if you happen to be an international student and you're doing a PhD, we'll be here the following week doing PhDs. And that will be focused, we won't be doing, well, we'd love to be doing a PhD in here. Alison's got all those, haven't you?
Yeah.
We'll be looking at specifically at careers associated and some tools around if you are completing a PhD and careers associated with that, the options of alternative pathways beyond tertiary, the tertiary environment in terms of teaching and research. So I'm going to jump in here, but this is the landing page here. So they've made some wonderful improvements over the last few years in terms of making it easier for our SCU students. So very simply here, if any time throughout your study over the next, even if you finish, if this year is your final year or your final term, you can use the SCU Careers Service for another 12 months after you finish. So that's a wonderful resource. And many students don't actually know that. When you have an appointment with the SCU Careers team, they can help you with anything to do with career transitions, anything to do with interviews, career planning, your resume, your cover letter, importantly, selection criteria, because that can be sometimes, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, but if you have a job that you're going for and they ask for separate selection criteria, that's a very specific approach to applying for a job. And sometimes having that additional assistance from the SCU Careers team in terms of helping you how to address specific selection criteria. Most jobs, and it depends on the profession, the selection criteria, and we'll talk a bit more about that later on today, will be embedded within, you'll put it in your cover letter, and it will be, you'll have the details for it in the job advertisement. I've got a couple of other people here. Oh, hello, Sandesh. Welcome. We're very happy to have you here. Here are also a few other things that are absolutely fabulous about what the SCU Careers team have done. They've put some sample resumes in here, and they've even gone so far as to create specific industry-related resumes. So, for example, if you're studying business and tourism, there will be a slightly different approach than if you're studying nursing, or if you're studying education, or perhaps occupational therapy. So they've actually put some industry-specific resumes in there. One of my suggestions would be that I would strongly suggest that before you go and reinvent the wheel, have a look in there. Also, the SCU Careers team, they have workshops very regularly. So they have additional workshops. This workshop today is kind of fits between the Postgraduate Association and SCU Careers, but the SCU Careers team specifically will run workshops that may be helpful for you. And mostly they're online, but I think they have had and may at some point, of course, return to having workshops for you at the individual campus. Also, this is something that I just want to add here is jobs. I know that you guys are here for building your network. And of course, you know, I imagine that building your network, you are interested in, of course, gaining some sort of employment or some sort of work-related experience. And so there are jobs there. And I'll also, as we move into the workshop today, I'll talk about volunteering. I might just pause now for a moment, and Hong and Sandesh, I'd love to hear anything that you would specifically like me to focus on that could be helpful for you, or what actually motivated you to enroll today in terms of perhaps gaps, knowledge, confidence, experience, with the employability, postgraduate employability landscape. I'd love it if you could type into the chat box there, and then I can actually make sure that I address, because no doubt what you have, your needs will be very similar to what other students need. And I love being able to work with the feedback that you guys give me in terms of what is, really what your needs are. So if you could take a couple of minutes just to type into the chat box there. I imagine that a few more people will join as we go along as well. So that'll be great. We have quite a lot of students enrolled in this workshop today, which is wonderful. Welcome if you're listening at home. And please reach out and come along live wherever you can. Oh, part-time job. Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you, Hong Ling. That's wonderful. Next week, we will be, and I'd love it again if you come live, but if you can't, make sure you register so that you get the link to the recording. Next week will be specifically part-time work orientated. And we will at least have one, possibly two, depending on our enrolment numbers, guest speakers. next week. So that will be fantastic and really good. But what I'll do today is I'll link as much as I can for you into the part-time work arena. Fantastic. Great. Thank you for that. Oh, opportunities in IT. Great. And so at you, Sandisha, are you studying postgrad in business? Master in IT. Welcome. I probably will, what if I had you in if I haven't had you already yet in our professional development postgraduate unit in the School of Business and Arts and Law, we will no doubt meet. Fantastic. All right, great. And Hongling, what course are you doing? Teaching. And what area are you doing? Oh, early childhood. Amazing. Wonderful. Well, you've both got professions where there is, well, there's a lot of change, of course, in every profession at the moment, but many, many opportunities. But both of that, it's really helpful for me. So what I would suggest for both of you as a starting point for looking at part-time work, students generally tend to dive straight into websites like Seek and Jora and Indeed, and there's nothing wrong. They're wonderful, wonderful sites. But I would suggest looking at jobs for students. Just make sure I haven't jobs for students, because many of the jobs in this job posting here, they will have been posted by employers that have come to the university and they're specifically looking for our SCU students for part-time work, for volunteering, for internship positions. So I would use this landing page as one of the go-tos before you go to Seek, because when we're thinking about employability, you want to think about where are they looking to connect, rather than kind of casting your net really wide. Seek is wonderful, and I thought today I might actually, because I suspected people will be probably looking for actual work as part of their networking process, I thought I'd go through and show a Seek profile so that you can actually also look at how important. So as a stage by stage, I would suggest in terms of the actual searching process, I would suggest looking at the jobs for SCU students, and then Seek would probably be one of the other places that I would suggest. But we might loop back around, and I might even at the end come back into the SCU career site and just show you a few other things that might be helpful. All right, let's get into, and sorry, you'll have a little look at my, here we go. All right. So I've just been talking about a little bit about job vacancies, and I've talked about how the SCU careers team also have resume samples, but they can also help you with the resume practice. Before I continue any further, I'd just like to acknowledge and pay my deepest respects to the ancestors and the descendants of the lands upon which we meet and study. I'm mindful that within and without the buildings, these lands always were and always will be Aboriginal land. Now, it might seem a little bit strange to be in a networking, or how to build your network in Australia, and then to have a topic of self-awareness. And I would say in my years of being involved in this profession that this really is, and the more I teach and the more I learn and the more I practice in this space, the more I come to realize that this process of self-awareness is absolutely fundamental to career success, career well-being, to finding meaningful work, to finding sustainable work, to enjoying our professional working lives, and to staying healthy and happy in our work. But just on a little bit of a side note, or to highlight the importance of actually learning about ourselves, and then how that feeds into the application process itself, is that this is a real example of a student that, a former student, Dominique, and he was going through the application process of transitioning from being a student into his professional life. And this is not so uncommon. He applied for 526 jobs, just about one job every day, and he didn't get an interview. And then he changed tact. He tailored each application, and he looked at what his strengths were and what he could actually bring to each role. And all employers, this hasn't changed for several years, is that what they do, or what they tell us that they want, is that they want, sorry, I'm just going to move all of this out of the way here. They want to know what makes you unique. But importantly, they want to know what your strengths are and how they relate to the job itself, and also what you have previously achieved in your professional lives. Now, sometimes, particularly, I'm so conscious that, while I work with, international students, what I have observed, because of the, I guess, the kind of Anglo-centric approach, or it's not necessarily actually what happens. I think what we're sort of conditioned, or have almost conditioned our international students to believe, is that they're not valued, but in fact they are incredibly valued. And we're conditioned to believe that that international students can't initially, and certainly there are hurdles. I'm not what's the word? I'm not pretending there are not hurdles, but I'm conscious of mindset, and I'm conscious and have learned and continue to learn about how we use narrative and stories to almost talk ourselves out of opportunities based on information that may not be, there might be some employers that are reluctant to, employ, non-domestic students, but that's not the case for all employers. And we have here in Australia at the moment, we have a really buoyant very buoyant employment market, in that there is a really, really high demand for staff. We have skill shortages in IT. There's skill shortages, a huge skill shortage in early childhood. They are actually making changes to pay rates here in Australia in early childhood, but there are certainly skills gaps, and that is, and as soon to be postgraduate students, I'm really excited to say to you and to share with you guys, for those of you that are here live, and for those of you guys that are at home, is that it's a really good time to be graduating over the next, either this year or the next couple of years, because of all of the changes that we've experienced here during COVID and post-COVID. So I want you to as you embark on finding a part-time job, and from here on, from today onwards, just check in with yourself about assumptions that you will make based on information that may or may not be true about finding work in Australia. Because I have seen plenty, in fact, I saw one yesterday. I've seen plenty of international students excel here in Australia. I ran into a student yesterday, in fact, at the Gold Coast campus, which was just so beautiful. It's really nice to be back on the campus and to be having those face-to-face times with students. Originally, this actually was going to be on campus, and then we changed for a variety of reasons, went for an online model, but stand by, we will hopefully be back on with the Postgraduate Association with you. But I saw a student there, and he's actually he's doing incredibly well. I noted that on LinkedIn, and I won't just kind of disclose who he is, but he's working in the international office. And I noted that on LinkedIn recently, he got some sort of acknowledgement for like an up and coming voice, or up and coming individual in the international education career space. So that was really, really exciting. It was exciting to see it pop up on LinkedIn, and exciting to see he graduated quite a few years ago. I imagine he's got residency here. He's had a family here. Just wonderful. So from here on, from today on, if you have talk to sometimes other students or family, or where we get misinformation that says that we can't achieve things because of things that may be based on old information. So what do we need to know about ourselves with that? Well, we need to know that there's a lot more research coming into the whole kind of motivational goal setting, all that space around the looking at our thought processes, and we want to make sure that we have what we call a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is that just kind of looks at situations and says, this is the way that it is, nothing's going to change, I can't improve, I can't do better, it just is what it is. Whereas a growth mindset is open, it's curious. Excuse me one sec. Oh, sorry, I'm just in a class. Beautiful, thank you so much. Sorry about that. The only time the buzzer goes is when when I'm in a class. All right. So there is a lot more science as well that is entering the whole kind of coaching, leadership, growth, personal development space around our mindset, and how that actually impacts our day-to-day lives, and how our thinking then becomes our actions, and then our actions become our lives, essentially. So check in with yourself and watch when you start to make kind of self-fulfilling prophecies, when you sabotage, and when you talk yourself out of things that based on, I think the most important thing is based on misinformation, or where there's no evidence. All right. So when you're doing your application process, and you're doing a cover letter, all of these key things, these 6 key areas here will be important for your cover letter, your resume, and also for the interview. So what I might like to do, so that I don't sit here for the next few hours and just talk and talk and talk, I would like you to write into the chat box just one point, just one interest, one goal, something that's really important to you in your life. You're just going to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 into the chat box. Something that you know about your personality, perhaps that you like that you're really social, or you like plenty of time to think by yourself. I'd like you also to write number 6, what motivates you? Just one thing that motivates you. What gets you going? So perhaps it's a beautiful sunny day. Perhaps it's seeing your family, connecting with your family, and then one skill that you have. So just 1 point for each of these here, because that can start that process for you of who are you? Because when you go to the job interview, one of the first things, in fact, the area where students do most poorly, and also what I've found where students are most nervous, is kind of that bit about talking about themselves. And it's really, really normal to feel like that, because, you know, in most cultures we're conditioned not to talk about ourselves. The Americans are really good at it. I think we could take a leaf out of their book. Just one point for each. Nope. So you might be interested in scuba diving. One of your goals in life might be to earn $100,000 a year. One of your skills might be that you're really organized. And I imagine that if you're here listening, and or if you're attending live, I would say that you're highly motivated. I would say that you're organized. I would say that you're professional. I would say that those that are listening, and even more so those that are here live, are the ones that are going to succeed. And it doesn't mean that, well, if you're not listening, you're going to miss out anyway. It doesn't mean that because you're here not live, you're not going to succeed, or that you'll succeed less. But certainly if you have made the huge effort to turn up here live today, I have seen a strong correlation between those students that really engage and take a really proactive approach to their careers. They do better than those that take a passive approach. And when people just kind of assume that someone else will take care of their career, it doesn't happen. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but you can make it fun and enjoyable, because you guys are in charge. You are in charge of your life and your career, not your mum and dad, not your friends. You are in charge of your future. So I can't wait to see what your 6, just 1 point for each of them. And I might just pause the recording now so I give you a chance. Oh, here we go. 2 new messages. Passionate about IT. Great. Thanks, Sandesh. Why are you particularly passionate about IT? Do you like, for example, I'm passionate about careers, but my passion for careers might be very different to if I had like 3 or 4 other colleagues. Oh, you like challenges. Beautiful. So you like solving. Is it the problem solving element of the IT? Yeah, I reckon as an international student, you'd have to really enjoy challenges. Oh, mindfulness. Mindfulness is fantastic. Thanks, Hongling. There's a lot of research actually around the role of mindfulness, our benefits to our professional lives, benefits to our physical, psychological, mental, and emotional well-being with mindfulness. And mindfulness-based practices can be so incredibly helpful. It's okay, I've not been sharing my screen. Oh, here we go. What have we got in here? Great, thank you. What else have we got? Yeah, solving problems and learning new things every single day. Fantastic. It's a really useful list. One of the things that employers actually really love, it's in what we call the big 5-factor model, and they really, really like to have students, when they're employing people, they really like, it's called openness. There's an acronym for the big 5-factor model, which is openness, and curiosity is one of, they like extroversion, so they prefer people that, are like highly social people. Doesn't necessarily mean that if you're not social, you're not going to be a great employee, but they really love people that love learning. And a love of learning, I was actually just reflecting on this with a student in another unit. Well, I know this isn't a unit, but a form of a unit, and we'll probably meet, no doubt, for a professional development unit more formally at some point. But I was talking about curiosity and how helpful it is to be curious, because by being curious, its humility can be part of curiosity, because it then you can continue to grow and to continue to learn and not assume that you know everything, and then you can actually build more skills, which, when you have more skills, of course, you have more opportunities in life, essentially. You have more opportunities for greater experiences, and certainly for careers, in terms of the opportunities for you. So you've started to, so thank you so much for that sharing there, because you've started to just take a little bit of a step, and we'll expand on a lot of this next week. Next week, we'll be talking about, in more detail, and we'll touch on it all today, cover letter, resume. I'm going to show you today Seek profile example, because I want to explain a few things that are so important about using Seek that may impact your success if you're using that as a tool. So the things that make you unique. So we've just had a little bit of a brief explore. We could do a whole workshop on self-awareness, doing some doing some activities around what our motivation is, what our personality is, what your values are. So what are the things that make that give your life meaning and purpose? So you might value security, you might value family, you might value money, most people have got money in there somewhere, you might value independence. And why is that important? Well, if you go out there and get a job and you get micromanaged, and you got a boss that follows everything that you do, and you really value being able to make your own decisions and be responsible for yourself, then that role is won't necessarily be the be all and end all, but it may not be the best environment and the best experience for you as an employee, which then means that you won't necessarily flourish, you won't grow, you may not have the capacity to work to your optimum to develop those skills. So knowing about yourself before you start the process, and I'll show you really briefly at the end where you can just find some extra tools and some little activities in the SCU careers website that help you develop your self-awareness. So now what can you do? So you guys came along to find out about how you can build your network. Now, your Australian network. And one of the things that I was thinking about this morning is that there's no silver bullet. I wish I could come here and say, look, if you do this, then this is exactly what will happen. And I think it's one of the things that I do love about careers, because of the variety and the landscape and all the things that change and all the moving pieces. But I also know that as a student, if you come along to a workshop like this and then I say, well, you've got to go and network and you've got to go and put yourself out there, that can be really terrifying. So I want to kind of couch this or give you lots of different ways, and so that you, and also encourage you to be proactive, and I probably don't, for those of you that are here live, I probably don't need to encourage you, but if you're at home as well, just a reminder, you have to, nobody's going to come and get you out of bed. Nobody's going to come and offer you the job. But I think as international students, you know how to self-motivate, but I also know that, you know, it's English isn't your first language, and culturally there's so many differences, and it can be challenging. So I want to encourage you just to, the way to build confidence, we think that, you know, people just are confident, and they're not just confident. They build confidence is kind of like a muscle, and you build it by doing more. But it's kind of like that tricky thing because you got to do more to get more, but then it's awkward and it's uncomfortable, and then you make mistakes. But in fact, that's actually the way to build your confidence and to get better, and to keep pushing yourself out there. And so I want to remind you what you've already done so far is that you've come to another country and you just got to keep going. And the people that I have seen that have navigated, if you're interested in certainly in part-time work, is you just have to keep having a go at it. It may not happen immediately. Last year, I brought along a speaker, an Indian fellow. I still have the great fortune of being involved in his life. He had to really, he's now the general, I think he's the acting general manager of a hotel in Tasmania. But he started not very many years ago, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. He started at the pancake shop in Coolangatta. He did already, you know, as many of you postgraduate students do, he already had an undergraduate degree in tourism. But he came to Australia, he kind of went not backwards, but he just sort of saw, okay, well, I've got to go and do this, get some runs on the board, just get that domestic experience. And then he just shot up and took off in terms of his career. Not everybody will have to go to the pancake shop. But the reason I think of him is around the resilience. A little bit of a side note here. If you remember this rave, what we call this rave model here, and I may or not maybe Avishka along, you can actually find his interview from last year. It's actually on in the postgraduate. If you look up postgraduate networking, I think it was finding part-time work on YouTube. I think we've had about 450 people have watched that clip, and he shares his experience and what he did to find and navigate work, and it'd be really helpful for the finding part-time work, but also how he approached being here in Australia, and being able to, he just got his residency. It's been a bit bumpy. It can be a bit bumpy for students getting residency here. It just came through for him, but he's married and living, he's happy, really happy, and living a really great life. And his wife is here. She recently got a fantastic government job. So just wonderful. So if you've got to increase your opportunities, and if you are Hong, you're at the, oh yeah, you're at the Gold Coast, and Sandisha, you're at the Gold Coast, or you at Lismore? If you have access, and then for those of you guys that are listening at home, if you have access to a campus, the top thing that I would suggest doing in terms of like increasing your opportunities is doing exactly what you've done, is by enrolling in this. That's the first start, because now I see you, I know your names, and it just starts, that process. But also I would say hang around in corridors. And so what that means is I would go wherever you can, go onto the campus if you've got a campus nearby, and I would engage in anything that's involved, like any sporting events that are happening, any industry association events, any careers events, any volunteering, anything that you can get involved in on the campus. And that might seem like, oh gosh, how's that going to help me get a job? What I have seen very specifically is that those students that engage in campus life also go on to do really, really well. It doesn't mean that if you're not in, if you're not near a campus, you won't do well. Not at all. Definitely not the case. But there is a higher chance that you will do well by being involved, because that is really part of the process of building your Australian network. When I was on the campus yesterday, it was just so lovely to see, particularly our international cohort from all over the world. They're on the courtyard, engaging, chatting, eating lunch, laughing, giggling, and you get that support. If you are, finishing up your degree, still go down there, hang out, and again, just see anything still that you can get involved in. I'll show you. I want to show you Seek very specifically, because there's things that you may or may not know already about Seek, particularly in terms of your Seek profile. That's a really important one, so I'll come to that. We'll take a break shortly. Access, so family, friends, classmates. We have the Bright Futures mentoring program. If you get an email about that, I would strongly, I think it'll probably be offered perhaps in term 5. When are you guys finishing? Oh, second term. Oh, only your second term. Oh, amazing. Oh, that's so good. Oh, I'm so pleased, because I'm so proud of you guys for coming and doing this now, because good on you. What maybe 7 years ago in the careers space, we really and I'm sure it was already kind of went, but as a team, when I was actually working with the SCU careers, we really realized that being able to embed career development into students in their first year is absolutely critical for success, because you can actually start to chip away at all of these things. So by hanging out on campus, by doing the Bright Futures mentoring program, I'll probably have both of you guys in, you'll do a unit called no, not Ju Hongling, but Sandesh, we will do a unit called Professional Development together, which will be fabulous. That will come up for you next year in your study plan, kind of moonlight with roles here. So that will be fabulous. But if you start to just chip away now, like, so for example, if you get just open a LinkedIn, and then my LinkedIn is if you look up Beck Brown Careers, connect with me, and you'll find, so after you set up a LinkedIn profile, just get the bones in there and connect with me. You've got your first connection if you haven't already got one. And then you can start finding your other classmates on there. Then you can actually, when you get a job, you put your first job on there, and off you go. You've already started to build your first network in Australia. Oh, amazing. Oh, thank you, Sam. You've got one. Brilliant. Good for you. That's amazing. So if you can find me on there and just reach out and let's connect. Fabulous. And Hongli, if you haven't got one, brilliant. It will be helpful for you. And that's a whole kind of another workshop. But LinkedIn is it's good for oh, excellent. Oh, I'm so proud of you guys. That's amazing. LinkedIn is, I think it's most helpful when you get to sort of a couple of years out. It's good in right now to get it set up, because then you can start to you can start to just add people, and then you can start to just play around with it. And if you just start to dabble, just literally spend, even if you spent half an hour a week, or even, so that, what's that, like 5 minutes a day, doing something actively towards your career, you would find that by the time you pop out there in 2025, you will be streets ahead of the others. So start, all the motivational speakers around anything that we want to achieve in our lives. Oh yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Sandesh. Yes, add each other there. Brilliant. Anything that we want to achieve in our lives. I was listening to this podcaster that I really love, and she was talking about achieving goals, and essentially she just said start today, and you start with 5 minutes, and then you've just literally and you will have been here for a couple of hours, which is awesome. And so you're already really just invested in your career. And I wish that more people knew that a career is actually something that you invest in. It's something that you take care of, that you nurture, like a pet, or a surfboard that you really like, or you take care of a friend. You take care of it by making sure that you are doing what's healthy and wholesome, and shining it, educating yourself, learning, growing, so that you can keep reinvesting in it. Because also we have to work, but also work affects our health. And then if we're not well mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, then we can't work, which means that we can't earn money. All right. So there's lots and lots of other things that you can do. One of my I've got plenty of international students in my, oh, lovely. So good. Thank you, Sandesh. I've got plenty of international students in my connections. Feel free to go in there and have a look at their study. And so you can actually go and look at, once we've connected, you can go and look at my connection, I think, and you should be able to, yeah, beautiful. And then you can actually ask to connect with other students. Particularly former students. And so my LinkedIn is really made up of professionals in my field, and then the rest of them are all students that have studied, that still connected with. So there's a huge platform of people there for you to make a connection with, and students love to connect with other students. So feel free, if there's anybody on there, and some of those students are mentors, some of those students still involved with the university, etc. So feel free to reach out to other connections there. Now, and what made me think of that is there's an organisation where one of our former students works, which is Study Gold Coast. If you're up on the Gold Coast, they do a lot of work with international students, and they have, and this might be something for both of you guys, they have a student ambassador program, which is just awesome. It's been running for several years now. It's become quite prestigious. And Study Gold Coast, there used to be a separate organisation, state government funded, but now it has been combined with like Gold Coast events, and it's become a very prestigious, and there's a lot of money being invested in Study Gold Coast. So there's a lot, and there's heaps and heaps of events and activities for Study Gold Coast. If you have a look on my connections, there's a student called Mohit. I can't think of Mohit's surname, but have a look for Mohit on my LinkedIn connections. I might even get Mo to come along one of my other connections to come along next week to have a chat to you guys. He's one of our international students. He's just done brilliantly, and he's been since his internship, he's been working for Study Gold Coast. They've got lots and lots of activities and events for connecting international students, and they've got lots of stuff in terms of connections for networking events and jobs and all that sort of stuff. So that's a great resource for you. When you come to the very end of your or Hongling, yours will be you'll do, which is great. I believe you won't have an option for placement in your degree. You will have compulsory placement, but the wonderful thing about the compulsory placement is that you get that hands-on experience, and then that hands-on experience immediately forms part of your future. For you, Sandesh, you will do professional development in the workplace, which is a postgraduate unit, which you'll most likely do with me. And then you'll also have the option to do internship. And I've got one student out on postgraduate student, because it's an elective. I've got one student out on placement at the moment, and he's just doing brilliantly. He's with a marketing company up in Brisbane. Any placement, any volunteering, you could have a look at Gold Coast volunteering. They have heaps of opportunities. But anything if you have a special interest in like bird watching, or a special interest in motorbikes, or a special interest in mountain biking, have a look. Just type in, mountain biking activities on the Gold Coast, or bird watching Gold Coast, and you'll find that there's all sorts of little meetups. You'll find there's coffee groups. You'll find there's Facebook groups. You'll find that, and I really encourage. Oh yes, Gold Coast volunteering. Yep, and Mohit Study Gold Coast is also would be worth following on LinkedIn. Absolutely. I'll find the website for you, and we'll take a break in a minute. I'll get the website for you. So there's actually so much that so if you did, if you wanted to stand out as an international student, well, the first thing is you're already streets ahead by coming here, because you know that you've got the next 2 years. What students often do, or year and a half, whatever, even if you had 1 year, students kind of get to the end of they get to the last 6 months of their degree, and then they go, I better start thinking about it. If you made some extra friends, if you got your LinkedIn set up, if you did a little bit of volunteering, got a part-time job, and then you went to a few associations, you came along to a few of our events, you got an industry membership to, something to do with IT, education department, and you will be 10 times further ahead than other students, because also you will have you won't just have a resume that'll have, maybe some work in your country of origin, your undergraduate degree and your postgraduate degree. You will have country of origin experience, your previous degree, and then you'll have all these other things, all these other activities you've engaged in. You can already, I would encourage you immediately to put this workshop on your resume. There you go, straight up. Come along next week and you've got another workshop to add. You could put it under professional development activities. So immediately you've got yourself like a couple of extra lines just from committing to a couple of hours of your life on a Friday. So kudos to you guys. Let's take a break. Come back. I'll show you the Gold Coast volunteering website, go through some more slides, and really importantly, I want to show you the portal for SCU careers, where you look for jobs in there, and I also want to show you, of course, Seek, and a few other slides and resources. Next week, we'll look at specifically at cover letters and resumes. Here in Australia, we have some particular ways of doing things. but I'll talk more about that. All right, so let's take, we've got some questions there in the chat box. Oh, amazing. Yes, retail, lifeline, gardening. Yes, great ideas. Absolutely, yeah. And the great thing, just before we take a break, is that since the pandemic, there are so many more opportunities. So a few years ago, really quickly, probably I lost track of time with COVID a little, maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago at the most, it was so hard. Even our domestic students couldn't even get voluntary work. That's how tight the labour market was. Now, we can walk along in any regional area and you can look in a shop window and you will see that they are advertising for staff. So what that means for international students is it is the best time in my professional working life for international students to get rungs on the board here and then to build, and you will build really quickly your career. So I'm really excited. It feels so good to be teaching in this space with lots of positive messages. All right, I'm going to take a break. And I'm just going to pause this. Righty, we're back. I thought I would do so that it's just make it a little bit more chatty for you guys. I would love to know so you're thinking about getting a part-time job. What sort of part-time job would you like, and where would you like to be working? Let's take the box there. Sharing the screen. And while you're typing in there, I'm going to just go through, just expand on a few little things. Here we go, in the chat box here. All right. And when you want to work, thinking about working in IT, do you want to work in IT in a university? Would you like to work in IT? Oh, speaking of which, they often are looking for, if you're at the Gold Coast, they often look for staff to help in the library and like IT support in the library, and they do employ, well, certainly they used to employ international students in that role. Are you interested in IT in education? Are you interested in IT in tourism, IT in government, IT in, what else have we got here? All fields. Great. Okay, and cybersecurity. You went, Sandesh, I didn't have, did I just have, amazing. Okay, cool. All right. I just had somebody else. I didn't just have you in PDW, did I? Oh, cool. Oh, it's funny. I had a student with a similar name, but she was in her final year, but she was also interested in cybersecurity. Phew, I suddenly thought. And what about you, Hong? Oh, so Hongli, all open to all part-time opportunities. Okay, great. Well, we'll have a look. Sustainability and education, fantastic. And you put up some really interesting ideas. That compost site info you put up before was great, interesting, fantastic. Okay, so we'll have a look. We'll have a look at Seek, and we'll also have a look at where those jobs are advertised for students on Career Hub. Talked quite a bit about networking events, industry forums. So for you, Hong Ling, through the department, through education, through the School of Education, they have some, over the next couple of years, they do have forums, and they do have events, and they also have the careers team that do come in, the SCU careers team. They come in and directly run workshops and things, and some of it's it's not yet embedded, but they certainly run workshops for you. So those will be helpful for you. Next week, it's specifically on part-time work. So that's great. And in fact, I might even do a bit of a dive between now and next week into part-time roles in IT, and bring some of that along next week, because we are getting more postgraduate students in IT. And so I'll bring along some options for that next week. Registering with recruitment agencies, look, I wouldn't worry about that for part-time work. I would definitely get my LinkedIn and get that set up and put on there. You don't necessarily, there's a label on there that you can put open to work. I have mixed feelings about that. Certainly as a new, for the next couple of years, when you're getting into that graduate space, I wouldn't suggest putting that tag open to work over your photo, but you could certainly trial it while you're looking for part-time work. You could approach employers directly. It can be a little bit harder. I've certainly had students that have cold called because they've wanted to work for a particular employer. So a couple of years ago, I had a law student actually in this program, in these workshops, and she was postgrad, and she approached a law firm directly and got offered a job. And then there's associations. The important thing, but I think I've made that really clear, is that there's 80% of jobs are not advertised. And so there are a huge amount of jobs under the surface that you can get to by essentially building your network, hanging around in corridors, letting people know that you're available for work, and just essentially getting out there, just like you've done by coming along today. SCU, they use Jobs Tracker for their jobs, and we're going to talk through a SEEK profile later on today. As I was saying before, at the moment, and this is, it's been many years before we've had this happen, but it's common now, as I said, there's signs in doors and windows, and in just about every regional area. I'm just south of the Gold Coast. Now I see jobs advertised all the time. And when I first moved here a few years ago, it's absolutely unheard of. You wouldn't see a job ad in a window. Volunteering is just a great way to get some rungs on. You may have plenty of work in your country of origin, which is brilliant. Doing some voluntary work, it just gives you some domestic Australian experience just to leverage off, and just helps build on that. I would always suggest including any other work that you have done. Don't undervalue it. I had a beautiful student last term, and she managed an art gallery in her own country. And she was embarrassed to say that she'd been the manager there, and she just really undervalued that experience. And I was like, no, you got to put it on there. You got to own it. And I think that's some of that conditioning that we that sort of that anecdotal information that's not necessarily true, that you need to kind of make yourself small here in Australia in order to get opportunities. Of course, yeah, you may need initially to make some concessions and make some different decisions in terms of where you work and how you work initially. But often that can be the case for even like a tourism student. Sometimes they have to go into some frontline operational positions before they, even if they've done a degree, before they jump into those management positions. But what will happen is, because you already have so many of those skills, you'll then move really quickly. after that. So we've got to know, and it's so lovely. Just as I was chatting and I glanced down at my phone, I just got that the connection from you, Sandeep, to connect. So that's just lovely. Really nice you started that process. So as soon as I come out of the class, I'll connect with you. So your lecturers and your tutors, if you go to class, you'll find that you may have like a lecturer for more than one class, and it can just be really nice. And if you engage with them and let them know, if you come across as being, enthusiastic, professional, engaged, willing to, try new things, you'll be surprised how many work opportunities come actually over the desk of the careers team, other lecturers, other tutors. And so when something like an opportunity comes up for a part-time IT job, and they immediately go, oh, Sandesh, or it's, it's a school needs somebody, immediately to come in and, manage a class or whatever. Yep, Honling, who is the best person for that? And it's that kind of top of mind that is really powerful. So don't underestimate. Now you've got started by connecting with each other on LinkedIn. Every time you go to a class and you meet somebody new that may be connected on LinkedIn, you go to a workshop, you meet the careers team, they've all got profiles, etc. Jump on board and connect. Colleagues at work. So when you get your part-time job, of course, your part-time job, I had a student, undergraduate student out on placement. She's doing event management and she was working in a hotel, but she had a part-time job on the side, and she just graduated, or was just about to graduate. And she was offered a management position from her part-time job, and sort of is taking a slightly different direction. So don't forget that your part-time job could actually become a great interim job, even if you go into a supervisor or managerial position. And even if you're in IT, for example, or you're in early education and you're the retail manager, gaining those management and leadership skills can be really helpful and really transferable into other professions. So there's often your part-time work, and your part-time work is that place to, perhaps, meet a partner, make other friends, fun. There's lots of fun to be had at work. And I think being, studying, surviving as an international student, being in a foreign country, learning the culture, it's just all so new and so much. And try to get good grades and to improve English. There's a lot of work there. So just make sure that you're having fun, because the more that you have positive experiences, then the more you're going to have positive relationships. This is certainly what the research tells us. And then if you're having good relationships, then opportunities come. Family, friends, other uni students, community groups, sports and clubs. So just a couple of final things. Be proactive, research employers. You'll do this, you'll have placement, Hongling, with your education. And for you, Sandesh, we'll do it in professional development. You'll actually have to come up with a list of that's potential employers for future. Oh, good. Okay, cool. Cold calling, try and reach out to home, first impressions, etc., etc. I think we've covered. Oh, just back here. Short courses. LinkedIn offers some short courses. That's another way to, particularly something like IT, or like anything to do with leadership, learning, education, communications. Short courses would be helpful for both degrees that you guys are doing. But there are all sorts of short courses that can be free or nominal, like a small amount. They can be really helpful in terms of fattening up your resume. So any opportunities. But again, as I said, just by attending this workshop, I would put it down in your resume. immediately under professional development, professional learning. So what are employers looking for? Well, they're certainly looking for all the skills that I've seen you guys have in here. You've connected with one another, which is a really good example of how you would work in a team. Emotional intelligence, ongoing upskilling, critical reasoning, cultural alignment is looking at the kind of the culture of the organization and being a good fit, drive and commitment. I think that we'll save some. I'll quickly spin through it. I want to spend some time going back onto the careers site and show you the jobs because you're interested in part-time jobs. I will go through some of this stuff to do with cover letters and resumes next week, but I'll just highlight a couple of things. Really importantly, if you come back to that first page of that guy that the guy that applied for 500 jobs, if you just use any old generic cover letter and you don't talk about who you are, all those really unique features of who you are, what you've done, why they should employ you, then there's chances are you're just wasting your time. And it's really tiring applying for jobs. So apply for less jobs and have a really tailored approach. And I will talk more about that next week. Here's a few things to stand out. Just make sure that you always find out the employer's name. Make sure your cover letter is only one page. Make sure you use super duper duper important. And I'll show you this in Seek. What happens now is there's automatic tracking systems. And so when you apply for a job online, and I'd try, if I were in your situation, I was looking for a part-time job, I would either look to the local area, see if there's any job ads around, but then I'd look at who my immediate connection is, who's already got a job, who might be working somewhere, and start there. If you apply for jobs on Seek, it's a longer process. I'd certainly say not to not do it, but I think you'll have more success through your network initially. But we can come back to some of that next week. Because next week is all about finding part-time work. Certainly with your cover letter, make sure that that it's concise. I'll bring some samples next week. First impressions count. You want to make sure it's really engaging. You want to make sure it's specific for the job that you're applying for. And I'll just pause here. If you'd like to take a screenshot of that can be helpful for you knowing how to lay out your cover letter. I will go into more detail specifically on this. Tailor it, tailor it, tailor it, tailor it. Also put it through Grammarly. So important to check your grammar and your spelling, particularly when English isn't your first language. Even when English is the first language, it's really easy to make typos. So here in Australia, I'm going to do a cover letter, a resume, and I talked at the beginning about a selection criteria. Now, for you, Hongling, in education in Australia, you will actually have to do a separate selection criteria. For you, Sandesh, unless you're going for a government job or a not-for-profit job or anything that's government funded, defence, education, local government, state government, federal government, you will need to address separate selection criteria. Essentially, selection criteria is the requirements for the job, but importantly, very, very importantly for Hongling, for your professional work. So when you go out to be an early childhood educator, when you're applying for a job, you must address the selection criteria according to the way that they will ask you to do it. And then often you'll submit it through an online application form. I had a student, it was just amazing. We had a small group of students when we ran this series last term. Had a postgraduate student who came to all of the workshops. I think we had 3 or 4 workshops. And a week after the workshop, she had a job in education. She was at the end. She had a job in education and she got it actually And she did absolutely everything that we suggested. And she got the job with one of the people that she'd done her placement with. And what she did was she connected with the principal on LinkedIn. And then she just like, because she really wanted to work at that school, she wrote to the principal and just said, you know, like, I'm finishing up soon. She just wrote a really lovely little message and just said, you know, thanks so much for connecting. You know, if any opportunities come up. And he just wrote back straight away and said, yep, let's have a meeting. She had a meeting, and then a couple of days later she had a job, which is just, yeah, fabulous. We also had another student. We only had a small cohort, so actually half of the cohort last term just the last series that we ran, got jobs immediately. Another student, she was a researcher, she was academic, or doing a PhD, and I'll talk about that. That's another. I'll talk about that in the PhD workshop in a couple of weeks' time. But she also essentially just did all the suggested things. And so, again, I'm so excited for you guys that are here and listening, because if you just put into action what you learn here, take the tools, use the resources, and then put that into action, and you will find that maybe you won't get results immediately. Maybe you'll have to refine things, check in, ask for extra help, and then bingo, you're on your way. You can do a resume. We'll talk about that last week. For you guys looking for part-time work, you could do a one-pager, 2-page, certainly no more than 2 pages. If you're going for a graduate position, 2 to 3 pages. You must always have a couple of referees. Certainly by the end of this series, if you come along and I see you here, I'd be confident to act as a referee for you. And that's not like you must come along, and it's if I see you here a few times and I get to know you, and then I'm confident that I can vouch for you. But you can also use your lecturers, because you'll have them for 6 weeks in a 6-week model. You could use your landlord. You could use, like a family friend, etc. You could use somebody from the international office. I know that students, initially, it can be quite hard to find referees, so there's just a few ideas. Super duper importantly, here in Australia, we don't include our age, our marital status, or a photo. I had a postgraduate student in last term, and I think it was just culturally the country of origin, actually all of those things were included. So we don't need to know whether you're married. Certainly don't need to know if you've got children. Photo is optional. If you have an English name that you prefer to use here, that can often, and it's, I'm ashamed to say that, but I say it not for to not recognize what your original name is, just for tips on how it can be helpful, mainly because Australians are terrible at pronunciation, myself included, and a little bit lazy, and because we're this isolated island down here in the middle of nowhere, we're going to be a little bit Australian centric. So if you want to make it easy, pick an English name, and that can definitely be helpful for you. Your check first. You can use Grammarly now. If you haven't already got Grammarly, a Grammarly account, it's really, really helpful. Particularly, it's helpful for everybody to improve your writing, and great for doing resume and cover letter. Here's just a few things. I'll talk in more detail about what I have talked about today. Is if you have a look, 7, 8, 9, and even 10, just by coming along today, you've actually got ways that you can increase all of this bottom bit. You've already can go and add some training here. Come along a couple more, you get a referee. Your professional membership, yours will be around early childhood education. I'm not sure what the professional memberships are specifically in IT industry. I think there will be a range of different professional bodies. And the professional associations are organisations that provide that. There's probably like an association for, you know, cybersecurity, for example, in Australia. And they provide the guiding principles, they offer education, they offer membership, they often have workshops, training, professional developments. They can be wonderful way, and then you get to meet people, build your network, build your professional profile, etc. I started this session by talking about achievements. And again, I love that you guys are here so early in your, and just if you happen to be listening and you're not early on, that's fine. You can quickly go about getting involved in some volunteering. But if you are here, you can work towards, with your study, you know, you can work towards being involved in extra projects, taking any leadership opportunities in the university through anything to do with the student association, anything where you can get rungs on the board, working at Lifeline, amazing. Raising additional money for Lifeline, amazing. Getting involved in any kind of sporting event, it might be karate, it might be lawn bowls, all of that. It gives you specific things to include on your resume, and it gives it that tailoring, so it's not just like, you know, the same old. Helps you build your skills. Sport's a wonderful way to build teamwork. It's a way to build your leadership skills, etc. Super duper importantly, automatic tracking systems, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about your Seek profile. What you do, your Seek profile. What you do need to know about with automatic tracking systems, this is so important. I learned this through personal experience a few years ago, is that if you have fancy formatting on your resume, so for example, even if you download your resume, you add everything into LinkedIn, and you download, it creates a resume for you. It looks really nice. If you then add that to, say, for example, you apply for a job on Seek, and you add that LinkedIn profile, what you will find, it will jumble your voluntary experience with your education, and it'll jumble your contact details because it hates formatting. It hates, and so there's quite a lot of formatting, for example, from the LinkedIn resume, and the automatic tracking systems hate it. So when you're using a template for your resume, I would strongly suggest that you use if you go onto Seek, and we'll go onto the website in a minute, that you use one of their resumes. Or another place, my favorite resumes, and I'm not associated with this organization at all, but I've given this website to many people and they've had great success with this resume. So if you go in there and you look at their sample template, it's the one that's got competence. They give you a couple of options there. I like the one that includes competencies. I personally have used it, and I would highly recommend it. I recommend it because the layout's really good. It's got the right balance of words to blank space, so the ratio is really nice. The automatic tracking systems really like it, so it can do keyword searches really well, and it's visually appealing. It's easy to fill out. It ticks all of the boxes. But Seek, they also have a good one. And Seek, if you're using the Seek one, then you know that at least Seek really likes your formatting. So keywords are really important when you're looking for a job, whether it's a part-time job or, and we'll talk more about this next week. Use simple headings. Avoid any tables or images and any funky formatting. So Canva or Canvas, can I remember, they have some beautiful resume templates, but again, the automatic tracking systems hate them. You can use a nice fancy one if you're going to send it. Well, you don't go too fancy, but you can use a fancy one if you're going to email it to someone. But if you're going to upload your resume anywhere online, do not use a fancy resume. use these styles of fonts because that's what we know that the automatic tracking systems like are used. Avoid using page borders, etc. A couple of tips. I think we might take a break now. What I might do to finish off that previous section is and I'll finish off with things to do, just some real tips for the interviews. I'd like to pause there. We'll take another just a couple of minutes break, and I'm going to upload Seek, and also we'll go back to, just want to quickly show you where you can find the part-time jobs on the careers site. So we'll be back in, let's just take 7 minutes. So we'll be back, 6 minutes. So back at 10 to 11. Thank you. I can't count how many minutes. Just a couple more minutes. Thanks. And then I'll put Seek up there for you too, and then we'll get straight into it. Apologies at home if you had to listen for a minute while we take a break. All right, just one more minute. Just share my screen again. All right. Can you guys see? Just want to double check that because it can be a little bit funky in here. Can you see that I'm on the SCU careers page? Can you just type in there if you can just confirm whether you can see that for me? Oh, awesome. Great. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So if you remember at the beginning, we went on to SCU careers. Now, I want to just kind of point out a few things to you, because often with websites, there can be like kind of rabbit holes. And I don't want you to miss the fabulousness when you go down a rabbit hole and then you think there's nothing there. And in fact, there is some fabulous stuff there. Different people have different, I guess, kind of ways they navigate things. And anyway, there's a few rabbit holes here, but I'm not here to critique it because there's fabulous stuff here, but I just want to point out. So if you go to SCU careers, you'll end up on this landing page. Now, when you scroll down, here are all these tabs. They're fine, but this one here, jobs for SCU, it's just a video, and I don't think it's particularly helpful because that's not where you want to be. And book an appointment, nice easy tab. But if you come down here I'll come back to no, in fact I'll just talk you through. So in this careers fact sheets, they have these fact sheets. They have fact sheets for international students, fabulous. But one of the fact sheets that I love and they've had for many, many years is a thesaurus fact sheet. And it essentially just gives you words that is really helpful, super duper helpful, I think, for international students. When, in fact, even for domestic students, when you can't think of the word to put into an assignment, into a resume or a cover letter. And so they're down the bottom under the fact sheets, and it's called the thesaurus. There's great words in there. I love it because it's got words to describe your skills, etc. So that's super duper helpful. And then over here, this is where I would suggest that you go. So you need your login details. So we're going to log in here. You'll log in as a student. I'm going to go in as a staff member, hoping it all goes to plan. Yep, beautiful. It's taken a bit of time to have a little think about it. And then you end up in this whole other world. Now, again, there's a few kind of funky bits with it. Up here, in a really strange place, applications. And if you go down here to international students, there is some really sweet little videos in here. talking all about, down the bottom here, all about just things like health and safety rights, working in Australia, etc. You guys, as part of your visa, you are allowed to work here in Australia. In these quick little videos, he just talks about things like tax, work safety, and your working rights here in Australia. So I want to remind you that you do have rights as an international student working here in Australia, and there are places. So if you are discriminated against in the workplace, if you're not given a safe work environment, if you're not paid properly, you're not given the resources that you safely need to do the job, there are support areas. So you do have rights, and I want you to know that it's super duper important. The Australian government is getting tougher on employers that take advantage of international students. It still happens, but the penalties are they've recently introduced some penalties, which I'm super duper stoked about. It does happen in terms of underpayment particularly, but what you'll find at the moment, because it's a really buoyant employment market for students, is that you'll find that they'll be so desperate for you that they're actually putting up the rate of pay. And they will be eager to keep you because it's so hard to find staff. So the only thing is that you'll probably, hopefully you won't be working 3 jobs because there's nobody else to do the other work. You will be working hard, but you should be remunerated properly. And you do have working rights here in Australia. So there are a series of sweet little videos there, and they're really quick to go through. I wanted to show you where they are because I probably, if I was looking for stuff as an international student, personally, I probably wouldn't have gone under applications. I don't know why. I would have gone under there, for applications, for resumes, etc. There's also awesome other stuff in here, like there's this cover letter builder. I'm not a huge fan of it, but other people might find it helpful. I'm going to talk about cover letters next week. There's other documents in here, same sort of thing with the resume builder. I think you're better off just coming along to the workshop or listening to it at another time. But these are wonderful here, like these practice sessions where you can practice and rehearse and then get instant feedback on your performance. Rehearse when you're practicing for interviews. I find that in all the areas where people most need to work, this is domestic students, professionals, corporates, international students, everybody needs to improve their interview skills. And I think because it's a lot harder to get an interview than it is to get through the interview, because you've got a much higher chance once you get to the interview, you're in the top, say, 10%. However, you don't want to miss the fabulous job opportunity that you really want by not excelling in that interview. So I would strongly suggest that you engage in those. I'll touch on a couple of things just with the interview at the end of this session here. Down here, there's some other resources for international students. There's a link to the fact sheet, etc., etc. Now, Bright Futures is the mentoring program that I was talking about. Next year would be a great time for you guys to get involved in the Bright Futures mentoring program. So term 5, so it's being offered next term. It was offered in term 2, so it must be term 2 and term 5. So term 2 next year would be wonderful. And the Bright Futures program is run by wonderful students that you like yourselves in several years' time, and they come back to help other students. Some of the students that are on my LinkedIn are students that are involved in the Bright Futures mentoring program. It doesn't require a lot of work. It is a bit of an effort to put in an application, but it doesn't take long, and it's such a wonderful program. Everybody that gets involved in it, it's open to all students. You do need to have completed several units of your study before you, because is that really kind of that theory to practice, but then you get somebody to help you make some career decisions. It's just the most wonderful program. Also, if you're looking at kind of things like what's happening in your profession, and then there's just other tools there for building your resources, you can look where the jobs are, etc., etc. Now, let's go back here. And so that's where that video is here, but you can look at some of these sites here are really good for looking for part-time work. And then here there's opportunities for graduate positions. And then here, beautiful. That's what I was looking for. This is a great place to look for part-time jobs as well. And they will be, so if you have a look down here, several of, or actually, in fact, many of them are jobs where they've come to, specifically come to us. There's 153 jobs on there at the moment. You can search by things like part-time job. I would just go all levels. And so you can see like there's a, you could get a job as a graduate teacher in the UK, but there's, so an example of a local job, it's not, doesn't relate to your profession specifically, but we've got one here for an assistant accountant. So that's an organisation south of Lismore that's come to us looking for our graduates. Same with this digital marketing one, environmental science one. These sorts of support worker jobs, certainly for your profession, Hong Ling, would be really helpful. Not so helpful for IT, but having said that, it still gives you some of that domestic experience. Doing support work is just the most rewarding work. Anyway, there's lots and lots of, oh, there we go, early childhood. That one's in Sydney. Obviously, you can't work as a teacher, but you can work as I think a teacher's aide, and there's there are other roles in early childhood that you can do in a part-time capacity. But any work, any part-time work that you do in Australia will be absolutely helpful, even if you work in you know, in a restaurant as kitchen hand. It builds your network. It gives you just one more rung on the board. So that's that. Now, what I wanted to do next is I wanted to have a look at Seek. We'll probably finish up in half for now, given that there's only a couple of you guys. So shortly I'll take some questions. Next week, go into more detail around part-time work. And Sandy, I'll have a look at what sorts of opportunities potentially there may be around part-time work in IT and IT professions, because I am so conscious that we've got, you know, a growing community of students there. Okay, so this is actually my personal Seek profile. Just bear in mind, I'm not looking for work at the moment, but I thought it would be handy just to show you a few things that I believe are super duper duper important to your success with applying for jobs on LinkedIn. So not for any other reason other than to assist you, I'm going to show you my profile here, only because it's, I wouldn't say it's perfect by any means, but it gives you a strength, you know, like how well it is. And it's just, it's full strength because I've filled out all the details. Now, why would you need a Seek profile? Because You want it to match your resume. It takes time. It's annoying. It's another thing to do. But once you've done it, then you can just update it, when you need to use it. But also it's really helpful because once you've done it, it sends you, if you have a look on this front page here, it sees what sort of work you do. So for example, my work is in, career development. And so it tells you recommended jobs. Sometimes it does kind of things that is like way off. Like I'm probably not going to be in, I guess that's a high school. But it does give you a collection. And sometimes it can be really interesting. It can give you ideas of jobs, that you perhaps have never, that you'd never thought of before, and particularly if you're new to, it just helps you build your awareness around jobs. Another website, in fact, on a side note that I really love, probably not so useful, it could be a really good one for you, Hong Ling, maybe for later in your professional lives. I don't know how much IT stuff they have in their www.ethical jobs. They've got some great jobs on there. It's just another useful website. So getting your profile. So you can go in here and you can edit it, change your, just make sure that it matches, things like an email address that you're using regularly. Make sure that it's up to date for what you need. You'll find that some of the stuff on here is old because it said I'm not looking for it. But if you are applying for jobs on there, just make sure that your LinkedIn matches the jobs that you're applying for, and like in terms of the resume, and also that it matches LinkedIn. So you put in all your career history just as you would if you were doing your resume, and you can literally like cut and paste the information in there. We'll talk more about, I've got some suggestions of some fantastic tools that can actually help you with automatic tracking systems. I'll bring that along next week. Again, just recently, that gentleman that I told you about that's a former student, his wife, she wasn't having success getting work here in Australia, and I gave her some tools to use around some automatic tracking systems that you can do to improve your resume. And then within a couple of weeks, she got work, and I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. So you're going to put in all your put in your work experience, put in your all of your education, definitely all the education, even from country of origin, put it all in there. Then this is super duper important. So for your profession, Hong Ling, and then probably not so much for IT, but things like working in Australia, you'll need, when you come to the graduate time, you'll need working with what we call working with children's check, which is a clearance that you don't have a criminal record. In Australia, you will working with vulnerable people. If you do support work, which is there's so much work in the support work arena. So working with people for international students, it's a great place to get work experience. You get to work on one-on-one or in community with people with disabilities, and they can sometimes have, they may not be, wheelchair bound. They may just have, mental health disabilities, and they need, they need assistance with, being more social. They may need assistance with shopping. Entertainment. Sometimes, in some of those support roles, you get to take them to the cinema. It's so beautiful working one-on-one or in groups with people, and it's a wonderful way to build your confidence, speaking, learning about people in Australian culture. Just as an example, you will need, and to do support work in Australia, you will need, but there's huge gaps in that market, and a great place for an international student to find work. You'll need a police check, but again, it's just a process of going through. You may need an international driver's license. That's perhaps the only thing that might be difficult for you if you haven't got a driver's license. But depending on where you are, like if it's on the Gold Coast, access to public transport depends on the role. Now here, super duper importantly, you can just add as many skills as you can, because these skills, the computer goes looking at the job ad. Like, so when you apply for a job, it's weighing up the skills that they say that they want and what you have, which increases. So, because what happens is the computer will decide for the first round, it'll decide whether you're a match. A computer, so a bot, will decide, which is really sad, and I don't think many people realize this, is that a bot will decide whether you're suitable for the job before a human being. And it's really helpful for recruiters, but it's terrible for people looking for work, because you may be a wonderful candidate for the job, but you just don't know how to basically give the computer what it wants. So the recruitment process, and I'll talk more about this next week, the looking for part-time work and graduate positions and ongoing work here in Australia, is that you need to actually make a computer happy. So you need to find out all the ways to keep automatic tracking systems happy. And then you also need to keep impress, of course, the employer. That's why it's much easier initially, like kind of to find work through people, where you don't have to kind of go through the whole Seek thing. But don't let that stop you, of course. Not to say you cannot get a job through Seek. It's just what happens is employers look for people to fill positions in Australia through their network. The last place they go is actually putting a job on Seek, but the first place people look for a job is on Seek. So there's already a mishmash. Whereas the first place people should look when they're looking for work is thinking about making a list of all the people that they know, and then letting all those people know that they're looking for work, and then getting into the community, doing some volunteering, and then looking at and then telling everybody in that community, everybody they meet through the volunteering, I'm looking for part-time work, looking at local job ads, in the local, anything like there's local papers, there's the Echo down in the Northern Rivers, there's all sorts of local rags. So looking at a much more local level rather than on Seek, because Seek is the last place, although it's one of the biggest platforms, it's the place that is the last place that they go after they've talked to everybody that they know. So when you do set up your Seek profile, just add lots, and I know that all of this information would just be like, oh my God, it's so exhausting. It is exhausting. But the great thing is, once you've done it, and then once you've got a really good cover letter that you're happy with, do a draft or a cover letter resume, and then make an appointment with the careers team and get them to help you tidy it up. And then once you've got your Seek profile done, and once you've got your first voluntary job, then things start to flow, and then you're just kind of improving and refining and adding and doing and you keep. So initially, but it's the same for all of us. There's a few years ago when I'm in the business, and with the pandemic, I had to make some changes and actually get out there after some things suddenly happened. And it was exhausting. But the great thing is, once you kind of get out there, you do it all, it's all done, and then you're just adding and just refining it and updating it, etc. So you're going to upload your resume. Mine's obviously a bit old there. But not actually actively, looking for work per se. I want to make sure that it's visible, but make sure it's like 2000. And so, for example, if I was applying for a job, I want to make sure that it's 2023 September, so just make sure that that is updated. You can go in here, down here, and then put some of the things that you're interested in, where you want to work. Then you, obviously you won't be an Australian citizen, but you will be able to put in, there's probably an option in here. Oh, there we go, that you have unrestricted work rights in Australia. So you're able to work here in Australia because of your visa. So let people know that you're allowed to work here in Australia, which will be really important for you. But what is most important with your SEEK profile is making sure you add all of these skills in here so that when it goes buzzing around and it looks it's like kind of like gambling. It's looking for a match between what you say you have and what they are looking for. Then you want to make sure, so mine, my SEEK profile sharing is off, but you want to make sure that it's on, so that when you are ready and you're doing it, you can actually go ahead and share it somewhere. Then in here, in career advice, I think it's in here. Yes, down here, there's some templates. So you might, so there's another document there. There's a cover letter template in there. So I would suggest that they would be very useful templates to use because they're designed so that they like the SEEK algorithms. And then they've got a list of transferable skills. Now, one of the most powerful resources that I really love, you'll hate me because you're going to have to work really hard to improve your resume in there. But once it's done, it's called Resume Worded. I've just typed it in there. I'll talk more about it next week. But basically, what you do is you do a resume and then you drop your resume into Resume Worded, and then it gives you a score. And don't be alarmed if your score is under 50%. It's good to know, because if you don't know that your resume doesn't have very powerful, like it's got passive words and it doesn't show many achievements, better that a computer tells you. Well, the computer's going to tell you anyway, because you're going to be applying for jobs and you'll be like, why am I not getting a job? And it's because your resume, it's just not powerful enough. Now, just bear in mind, I have given that tool to professionals in our field. It can be very easy to get, everybody can get outdated no matter what they're doing in a very fast-moving world, and they've got scores of like 56%. You want to get it up to about 85%. You might think, oh my God. But if you do, you will know that there's a really good chance that these automatic tracking systems really love your resume. And I speak from experience with this from, several years ago. I do know the power of it. And I do know that I very, very recently, that student, his wife, who was, struggling to find work here, once she used Resume Worded, and what was the other one? Oh, so Career One is another. Career One used to be www.career1. It used to be like Seek. So people used to apply for jobs through Career One or Seek. I don't know what happened, but they sort of lost market dominance. Now they're still around, but they can do, a human being can give you feedback on your resume. Good one to do, and it's free. You literally just upload it. But then they also get a computer to give you feedback on your resume. And if you took the feedback from the cover letter, the CV, Resume Worded, and if you got your resume up to 85%, and then you also got feedback on Career One from both a human being and from a computer, you will find that your odds of getting a job will go through the roof. Now, the process is very, it's quite disheartening, and it hurts, and it's brutal. But again, like those two tools are actually, I would say, even more powerful than getting a human being in the careers team to look at it, because there is so much automation involved. And then the human being that actually will review it at career one, they're kind of almost like a robot anyway. And so, and I don't mean that rudely, I just mean that they're in the business of really deeply embedded in, it's not to say our professionals on campus aren't amazing. They are amazing. But I believe that the combination of humans and computers will increase your absolutely increase your odds of getting a job. I'll just pause there. Thank you so much for listening. Is there any questions on any of that? I know it could be, I know if I was sitting on the other end, I'd be like, oh my friggin' God, I just want a part-time job. But I love when you guys come, because I think there's so many people, and there's so many people in Australia, I would say literally thousands of very, very suitable, highly intelligent, educated people that don't know that it's a computer that keeps rejecting them. And nobody likes rejection, even when a computer rejects you. And it's just a matter of learning to frame things and give the computer what it wants. And then once you get to the people stage, learning how to give the human beings what they want, which is a really nice segue to the last part of our workshop this morning. I'm just going to stop sharing that, and I'm just going to upload the last few slides here. And talk about the final stage of this process of gaining work and really building your network, because your network comes by the more work that you do here in Australia. The more you do, the more you create, like the more you get out there, the more opportunities you create for yourself. And I just, I know I've said it several times, is that if you're listening at home here, you have actually taken that first step. And there's kind of like there's an expression about kind of two frogs on a log, and you know, one of them thinks about jumping off the log and the other one jumps off the log, and then it's pretty obvious from there, which frog goes on to achieve the things that they want. So you got to jump off that log, and I just commend you, because if you're listening here, you've taken the first step. So just a few things. I might get you. I'm not sure if Hong's. We got somebody else here. Who we got? Oh, Hong's back. Got Hong here twice. I might get you to type into the chat box here your answers to these. Put a T or an F for the first one there. Is it better to be overdressed for an interview or underdressed? What do we think? True or false? Overdressed or underdressed? Oops. Let's put a T or an F for the first one there. What do we got? Yeah. Oh, okay. So it's actually true. Yeah, it's better to be overdressed. What they say, which is so sad, but it is the truth, is that they say that in the first couple of minutes of the interview that they will decide whether they're going to employ you, which is dreadful. Whatever you do, you want to ensure that your grooming is professional. I would always suggest for women, even in warmer climates, like, I mean, I've got a jacket on today, but you wouldn't necessarily wander around in Lismore in the middle of the summer in a jacket. but I would still suggest covering up your arms. I noticed that particularly younger people today will go to interviews and things with their arms not covered. I think it's just culturally too, it's important. I mean, Australia's very, laid back, but they do and dress, certainly a lot more casually than they do in, the Middle East, Europe, many parts of the world. I would suggest that you look at, if you can, have a look on the website. If you don't get a chance to actually go to the organisation and see what they're wearing, I would look at what other people in the organisation, how they turn up to work. And if you want to try to model that, and then they say to dress for the job that you want rather than the job that you have. So it is always better to be overdressed, but you don't want to be super duper overdressed. All right, next one. First 90 seconds of an interview largely impact. I've just given that one away. Now, is it better to talk about a technical area of weakness than a personality issue? That's a good question. Is it better to talk about a technical area of weakness than a personality issue? What do we think? It's actually true. So you're better off talking about you're actually better to talk about a technical area of weakness because of the emotion that can get involved when talking about personalities and personality clashes and issues associated with personalities at work. It is better to focus on the technical area of weakness with the view that whatever it is that you can actually work on it and that you will improve on it, and giving examples about how so they often will ask you about your weaknesses. You could talk about like employability related weaknesses. So, but I think you're better off. But then if you talk about employability related weaknesses, employability is things like adaptability. And if you're not adaptable, they're probably not going to want you. And then if you're disorganized, they're probably not going to want you. And then if you can't manage your time, probably not going to want you. If you're not good at teamwork, they're probably not going to want you. Whereas if you, were to highlight a particular challenge with, a particular type of IT software that you found challenging because it's coding, for example, and the complexity, that would be viewed, that would be better viewed from an employer rather than the fact that you're not very good at working in a team, for example. Because so much of the work that we do is working and being able, so much of work, sadly, there is a lot of time working with people, being with people, getting along with people, helping people, people, even in IT, and your capacity to get along with others, to help others, to engage others, to enjoy being with others, to motivate others, to support others is so important in work. So it's a bit of a tricky one, that one. Is it better to not to ask any questions at the end of the interview, than asking one or more? So should you ask a question or not? Is it better to ask a question, true, or better to ask no questions? I'm glad you guys are here. So better not to. Do you think it's better not to ask any questions? So it's actually better to ask questions. I would always say take a couple of questions to the interview. What do I find when I ask students what sorts of questions they would ask in an interview? 70 or 80% of them will say, oh, I'll ask them about salary. I'll ask them about training. And they're probably the worst questions that you could ask. What I would ask them about is, for example, what would my first day look like? Can you tell me a little bit more about the team? Could you tell me about any projects that you're working on at the moment? Could you talk about, you could ask them about, anything else to do with the job itself. You could ask them, so stay away from issues associated with, it's okay to ask about training, but it kind of looks like, I'm just in it for me. You want to be looking about that, you want to know how you can do best and perform really well in that job and contribute to that space, rather than, like me, what can I take? And I find that students, not deliberately, but they often get a bit kind of muddled in that area about, this job is about how I can get rungs on the board to get a better job. And of course, that may be true, but employers don't want to know that. They want to know, like, how are you going to help them? So it's really important, super duper important, to focus on how you can do a great job for them. Even if, you do want training, and there's nothing wrong with wanting training and good, being really well paid, and, to travel for work, and, have all those benefits, flexible work, and can I work from home and all that sort of stuff. Fabulous. But you probably don't want to give all of that away, in that you can find out some of that stuff. You can Google some of that stuff. So I'd stay away from some of those things. Asking what salary, there you go. I love it how I always, so it's best not to ask about salary in that first question. I find that most students want to ask about salary, but I wouldn't do it. You will find that it will come up somewhere in, depending on the nature, the type of the job. I'm always I wouldn't say don't apply for a job that doesn't tell you what the salary is, but it does make me, I'm always conscious of an employer that isn't upfront about how much they're paying you. So if it's not written in the job advertisement anywhere, it's not necessarily a huge red flag, but it's just something to consider, in that, of course they want to get you for the cheapest amount of price, but it can be a little bit revealing about employers. Said I wouldn't say don't go for a job where they don't say how much it is, but what they will do, what you can do when you look for, you can do an advanced search on Seek, and you can actually put in there like your pay range, and then only the jobs that fall in that pay range. So that's one way to make sure that you're applying. And this is probably later on for when you're going for graduate jobs. If you're going for a part-time job, certainly feel free to, make sure that they're going to pay you. In Australia, they need to pay you the award rate. Employers will pay cash in hand. Just be really careful. I know that many students do work cash in hand. Just be really careful with that, because you won't be paying any tax. So if you get caught not paying tax in Australia, there are penalties for that. But also, super duper importantly, it leaves you really vulnerable to, if you have an accident at work. Accidents happen so infrequently, but they do happen. And you don't then have any insurance for if you need ongoing medical care or treatment. So just be super duper. So, for example, if you're a delivery driver and you have a, like happens all the time, but I was thinking more like a car, but lots and lots of accidents happen with, Uber drivers and those sorts of things. And if you have some sort of accident at work, even if you fall off your chair at work and, break your coccyx, and you need x-rays and you don't have any work safety support for that. I would say, so I think that's pretty obvious one. Prepare. And then what about that last one there? What do you think about sending a thank you letter? Do you think you should? Do you think it's good to send a thank you letter? Yeah, definitely really helpful to send a thank you letter. It doesn't take long to do it, and it always gives a really good impression. It's become more common for people to send thank you letters, but I remember a student in occupational therapy a number of years ago, and she wrote a really beautiful thank you letter, and they were so impressed by the letter that she wrote that they'd actually offer the job to somebody else. And then because of her thank you letter, they wrote to her, and then she ended up getting part-time work. She ended up getting a part-time role or a casual role with that same organisation. And then she went on, I think she stayed with that organisation for quite a number of years, and it became kind of a jumping off point to get another role that she really wanted. So can be really powerful. Just really quickly, for part-time work, you'll probably just be interviewed by, the owner of the company. As you go, certainly for you, Hongling, as you go through the education system, you may be interviewed by more than one person on what we would call a panel. Likely, if you're going for a job with something like, Coles, Woolworths, Target, you might do a video interview. There's lots of practice tools that you can even just Googling video interviews and get some tips on video interviews. So you want to make sure, and there's different styles of video interviews, but certainly rehearse. Look for, so if you're going for a job and you had to do a video interview for Coles, you could actually even Google interview questions for Coles. So for example, and so much stuff is shared online. Google is your best friend. It's not always 100% accurate. I wouldn't necessarily Google and use AI. Oh, you could use AI, use ChatGPT for tips for video interviews, would be a good one. Assessment centres, probably not so relevant for where you guys are at. So if you have a look at, this is what professional attire, different professions here, I'd say lady over here on the right, pretty, depending on what sort of, I mean, if you're early childhood, that would be fine over here on the right, over here on the left. But if you're at home, sure, that could be fine for IT, and then anywhere in between for things. If you have a face-to-face interview, lots of eye contact, your tone, remembering to smile lots, small talk, particularly when they first, like if you're going to do a Zoom interview, make sure the first thing that they see is like you looking really happy and really smiley and really happy to be there. What happens, I've found in the majority of cases, is students are so nervous, is that they forget to show how warm and friendly and kind and what a great person they are. And I find that, oh my God, 95% of our students are amazing, beautiful, exquisite human beings, and they forget to show that warmth because you're trying to be all perfect. And God, life's too short to be perfect. Be yourself, and they will love you. They want to connect with you. They want to have that connection with you more so than they're looking that you're going to fit. Same when face to face. Be really friendly, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Get the information that you need. Show lots of enthusiasm. That might seem like a really obvious thing, but again, what people Still, every term when I get students to do practice interviews for me, every term I show enthusiasm, show enthusiasm, show enthusiasm, and I still get lots of seriousness. You do, of course, need to be serious, but you want to project that confidence and look like you really want to be there. Be prepared. So check all of the things. And get someone, if it's on Zoom, get somebody to get in there and have a practice with you. Check all of the links. I tell you what, the strangest technological things happen when you're stressed and you're busy, and it will be the day that the first thing that's never happened to you online before. Same with if you're going to the site, get there really early, rehearse, prepare, get your clothes out the night before. Take it easy on the day, make sure you eat properly, make sure you get really good sleep. Those things might seem really obvious, but if you are totally exhausted, had no sleep the night before, it's so hard to do an interview. Here are the things that they're looking for more broadly. As I said, they've talked about teamwork. And I love, again, that you guys are here because they're looking at all those other things that you like to do in your life. So they're looking at that placement. They're looking at your volunteering. So it's great that you guys are here so early. All the places where you work in a team. So that could be Lifeline. If you can do well in your studies, fabulous. But I find that I have every term, I don't look after interns every single term, but every time I look after internship students out on placement, they still get into wonderful roles, even if they haven't got great academic results. I would honestly balance my time between making sure, okay, if you're doing education, you want to make sure they do look at GPA, probably not in early childhood. GPA in both of your professions isn't necessarily as important as it is in, say, law, accounting. They do look at GPA. So I would balance my time between, getting out there and getting involved, because that will be equally, if not more important, than certainly you want to make sure that you can get through all of your studies. But I would be balancing my time between enjoying some part-time work, doing some hobbies, and taking care of my other well-being, with that bigger view that you're happy, you're healthy, you meet more people, you have a good time, and that all feeds back into success. They will always ask you some questions straight up around, what your most relevant skills are, your strengths, experiences. Tell me about yourself are like questions that are the most excruciating for students to ask, to answer. I would practice those as a priority because they're your first impressions, and they're the bits that people do most poorly in. Lots and lots of resources there in so on SCUs you can actually practice your interview skills. Next term, in November, we're going to run a series again of workshops, and one of the workshops that we do is interviews. So that if you haven't already got a job, that would be a really good one to come along to, just to practice those skills. We do it in a really safe environment. We get you to do a mock interview, and you just practice with other students. And my experience with that is that even in a couple of hour workshop, and we just play with just gentle stuff, nothing that kind of pushes people over, just getting people to talk about their skills, talk about their experience, talk about their hobbies, talk about their part-time work, talk about things they've done, talk about their degree, things they've learned in their degree. Just a couple of rounds of that, literally just having conversations with other students in a space like this. Completely, I thought we weren't recording for a second there, completely transforms students' confidence. And I have seen that time and time again. And yeah, you've got to come along and, come to the workshop. But once you're in, and students, like, they just look so much happier and more confident, and they look actually a lot more relaxed at the end of it, maybe because they've kind of gone through and they know, and that sets them up for success the next time around. And so it's kind of just, it's like, I don't know, we call it exposure therapy, where we kind of push you out there and make you have an experience, but then that builds confidence. And I'm smiling because I remember very quickly, because we've got a few minutes. I said I was going to finish up at 1:30, but I'll finish up at in a couple of minutes and just take any final questions. I remember a student a couple of years ago, and he was an older man, and I think he was from Kenya, and he was really shy, but he had such a lovely, gentle personality. But he used to come to class every week with like a really grey background and really poor lighting. And so I just kind of gently said, let's get you set up a bit better so that we can get the lighting nice. And I think from memory he'd wear, like a shirt and things. So then we got the lighting all set up and got him to sit in the camera, and he was just such a gentle, exquisite human being. And so then he was sort of setting up and coming into, well, this is work in the modern world. So he came into the workshop, started coming in with, good lighting. I don't know how the lighting is here today. And a good camera angle, so nicely centered in the middle. And then we just did this workshop of around the room, and he just, by the end, his whole face lit up, and I knew that something had fundamentally shifted in his confidence, and his capacity to believe in himself and his own experiences and his future of work. So please come along. I'd love to see you guys and for you guys that are listening at home, please come along to any of our forthcoming sessions. So next week, we're going to dive more specifically into cover letters, resumes. That will be the focus around part-time work, and I'll bring in one or two speakers, and they'll talk through what they did and their suggestions around things that are helpful for them in terms of getting part-time work. It's always better to hear from students rather than me going on and on and on. And then the following week, as I said, that's for our postgraduate PhD students. And then in November, we come back again, and we'll run through, we'll do a workshop similar to this, like a success workshop, and then resume couplet. I think we'll do, something to do with LinkedIn and branding as well. So that brings us to the end, Sandesh and Hongling. It's been so lovely. I know you guys are quietly there behind the scenes, but it makes a big difference to me. We had to say we're quite a good enrollment this morning, and I am aware that people do loop back in and listen to these recordings in their own time. And I was saying actually to my colleague Alison, is that I often enroll in workshops that are of interest, and then later on I'll go and listen to them while I'm folding the washing, and so I am conscious that there's people at home listening. So lovely to have you listening in, but so lovely to have you guys here face to face. I hope this has been helpful for you. Is there anything that you would like me to add, or any so come back, I'll see if I can have a look into anything that would be helpful for you guys with your professions for part-time work for next week. Is there anything else that I can help you with before we finish up here? Oh, good. Okay, cool. Thank you, Sandesh. Thank you. All right, fabulous. Okay, so thank you so much. I know we've been here a long time. You've been a wonderful audience. I hope it, Sandesh, has it been helpful for you, Hongling? Oh, good. Okay, great. Excellent. Thanks, Hongling. Thank you. Sandesh, has it been helpful for you too? Not helpful. I'm curious. Give me a score, like before you came in, how confident did you feel about kind of part-time work, scale of 1 to 10? And then how confident do you feel now? Hopefully I haven't made you feel worse. Oh, well, essentially the same thing. So casual, thank you for that. Thanks, Hongling. Casual work, part-time work. So casual work can be part-time work. And so, yeah, I think she's probably just maybe had a little bit of creative license with. So part-time and casual work, yeah. And then actually full-time work can be casual work, but full-time work can never be part-time work. But there's a lot of blurring in between. Sandesh, are you okay there? Yep, Sandesh is gone. Oh, there you go. All right, beautiful. All right, is there anything else that you guys? Oh, beautiful. That's my pleasure. Thank you. No problem at all. It's been an absolute, and I can't see your faces. Thank you, thank you. Yeah. But I look forward to working with you guys more. We'll be back here. We're here again for a couple of weeks. Yes, so next week, casual work, job hunting, and I'll look into whatever I can bring around IT and early childhood because again, we've got a high contingency. We've got a lot more international students going into postgrad early childhood, which is wonderful. And of course, we do have a lot more students going into IT as well. So they're relatively, we've had students coming into IT for a few years, but, you know, in terms of the longevity of our, say, for example, our Gold Coast campus, it's only really been in the last couple of years. And same with early childhood for postgraduate students. It's much more recent years that we've opened up that opportunity. But I think it's fantastic because and employers are starting to really realize the value of diversity in our employment. Many organizations talk about diversity. Some have been very slow to have diverse organizations, but all the evidence is there. They know that having diverse workplaces brings absolute benefits to all, to customers and to, because it brings different perspectives, different ideas. It builds really resilient teams, etc., etc. So it's all good news. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys hopefully next week and take good care. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye-bye.